If you spend any amount of time in modern digital spaces, you will likely encounter a pervasive sense of disorientation. It manifests as a creeping anxiety that our grip on reality is slipping, driven by constant gaslighting and a profound loss of personal autonomy. Scholar and author David A. Hughes argues this feeling is not an accident. He calls the current geopolitical state omniwar, the theory that we are living through World War III, waged clandestinely across every possible domain, so that the general public never recognizes they are under attack. Look at this photograph of a completely deserted Times Square during the 2020 lockdowns. Hughes argues the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic functioned as the opening campaign of this omniwar, utilizing isolation to execute a massive psychological operation. This is a petition for rehearing recently filed in the United States Supreme Court. The filing formally asserts that American citizens were targeted during the pandemic panic by a psychological war that remains active today. According to these filings and theories, the ultimate purpose of this continuous psychological stress is to demoralize and debilitate the public. By keeping the population disoriented, the architects of this campaign can break down collective resistance to the dismantling of liberal democracy. This is a portrait of the author Aldous Huxley, who was over 65 years ago about the precise direction society was heading. Huxley predicted that modern authoritarianism would seize power through slow, incremental changes. He warned that the quaint old forms of democracy, things like local elections, parliaments, and Supreme Courts, would remain intact, serving purely as a disguise for a new kind of power. He called this intended replacement a technocracy. This is a highly centralized system where unelected authorities govern entirely through technological and scientific control, bypassing traditional political consent. To achieve this transition, a transnational deep state uses omniwar to avoid physical battlefields entirely. Instead, they rely on cognitive conditioning, using digital networks and media to shape behavior and manufacture compliance. Secretly converting a functioning democracy into an automated technocracy requires the architects to construct a hidden, inescapable architecture of control, one that manages the population without them realizing the cage is being built. To understand how this cage operates, we have to look at the financial mechanics outlined by former housing and banking official Catherine Austin Fitts. She asserts that the current central governance system is executing a quiet global coup against humanity. This is the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Fitts points to the immense scale of the legacy financial engine, arguing that a unified central banking and warfare system is actively harvesting this planet for enormous amounts of resources. She theorizes that this harvesting is managed person by person through a covert social credit system. This is a hidden framework of compliance consisting of 3 primary lines of control. The first line of control relies entirely on financial carrots and sticks. By monitoring transactions and tracking digital identities, the system can instantly freeze the assets of dissenters while rewarding absolute compliance with economic access. Economic dependency serves as the foundational trap of omniwar. It forces public compliance through the threat of financial ruin before any psychological manipulation or physical force is even deployed. Once a population is economically secured, the system applies Fitts's second and third lines of control, continuous digital surveillance and covert physical intervention. This diagram illustrates how traditional warfare domains of land, sea, air, and space are being enveloped by a massive 6th domain, the cognitive domain. The military strategy relies on the weaponization of brain sciences to hack the individual. NATO and military cartels increasingly treat the human mind as a battlefield, viewing domestic populations as potential threats to state stability. This involves exploiting neurological vulnerabilities to alter human cognition and manage public responses in real time. Notice how these organic cell structures are locking together with digital nodes. This illustrates biodigital convergence, the physical integration of biological life with artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and digital tracking networks. When financial leverage is integrated with biodigital tracking, the system gains the ability to identify dissent at its source. By monitoring internal biological responses, The network could theoretically flag the impulse to resist before it ever manifests as a physical act of rebellion. This server tower represents a model of governance that operates entirely through silent automation. It is a highly centralized, algorithmic dictatorship, where social and political outcomes are determined by data processing rather than human discourse. It operates in the background, hidden behind the hollowed-out institutions and traditional names of liberal democracy. The psychological toll of living inside this architecture is severe. We are witnessing a massive surge in public paranoia and mental health struggles as individuals try to process living in a hyper-connected, heavily monitored world. Whether you view this dynamic as a literal, coordinated omni-war waged by a deep state, or simply the aestheticized anxiety of a society dealing with systemic collapse, the resulting loss of human autonomy is undeniably real. The concept of a front line has dissolved. War is now conducted within the neurological and biological systems of the individual, utilizing the digital infrastructure that connects them to the state.